So, welcome back to Podband Pipecast,
the premier pipe band podcast.
Today, we're going to talk about tenor drumming.
Yay,
Woo!
tenors! You know what we were going to do for this episode?
We were going to get champagne.
We need to get some champagne.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back. Let's get some champagne.
Okay. This episode is called A Toast to Tenor.
Clearly, because
we're tenors.
We're tenors and we're doing a toast.
We got to do the toast.
Oh, yeah. To tenors everywhere, us and everyone else who are so unappreciated, but actually make a huge difference in the pipe band. And if you disagree with us, we're going to explain why. So, yeah, two tenors.
Two tenors.
Yeah. For those of you that are only listening to this, we have some of the bubbly here. And if you would like to see us drinking it and see the rest of our beautiful faces and everything, and while we record this and all our other episodes, you can subscribe to our Patreon. And for a small fee per month, you can have access to all of our videos, and we have some great instructional material on there as well. A lot of tenor stuff. Because
mostly tenor stuff.
We're tenors, but we're also working on getting some other great content for the other instruments, because I guess they're kind of important.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, yeah. So, yeah. What are we talking about today?
We're talking about tenors. So, tell me, we've got 4 tenors in our band.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
What do you mean, why? 'Cause they're freaking awesome.
It's true. It's true.
So, yeah, tenors are, like I said, one of the most unappreciated instruments in the band. It's almost like, well, you don't really need tenors, right?
You don't notice them until they're doing something wrong.
Yeah, and then it's just like, well, don't even have tenors because they're just going to, be distracting and mess everything up, right? So, let's talk about the history of tenor drumming.
So I was reading, I was trying to look up stuff to, do my part of the research, and I found that instead of the midsection, it used to be called the bass section because the minimum requirement was a bass.
Yeah,
nobody cared about tenors.
No one cared, yeah. It was funny, actually. So, and when we get that a lot, still bass section, which I'm not really offended by, but it kind of is like, oh, I guess tenors are, here, neither here nor there. They exist, right? Well, so tenor drumming actually has a really proud tradition, and it's interesting because tenor drumming and tenor flourishing in general is not something that actually comes from the Scottish Highlands.
Really?
Which is like weird because you think like, well, what we do is part of this huge history in Scotland and everything. And that's true. That's very true. And drumming obviously is like back since the dawn of time. Cultures everywhere have had drumming. But the actual act of flourishing is what really makes pipe band tenor drumming unique. And that's something that if you try to Google it, did you ever try to Google that?
I did. All I found was swinging tenors. They're a thing.
They're a thing. They exist. That's a thing that exists in pipe bands. And pretty much nowhere else that I've seen. And yeah, if you try to Google it, there's like nothing about the history of tenor drumming. So once again, this is one of those cases where it's really passed down knowledge that we have today. And if you're like from our generation, you're like, if I can't Google it, and
it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't, no.
Because you have to be able to fact check everything,
right?
If you can't fact check it, then it's fake news.
Exactly.
So the passed down history that we have is that tenor drumming actually evolved as from when the British regiments went to Africa, and they were doing their thing in Africa for the African campaigns, and probably in the mid to late 1800s they picked up from the African drummers there. They picked up this art of flourishing. Their drummers would flourish their mallets. They would spin them to kind of do just a little bit of a show that would also be kind of intimidating for when they were on the battlefield against their opponents. They would like flip their mallets all around, and it's like, whoa, freaking scary.
Don't want to mess with them.
Exactly. And you can see some of that evidenced in really traditional or regimental bands will have their tenor drummers and bass drummer wear like a leopard skin, which I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Everyone? No.
Yeah. But that actually comes from Africa.
That's interesting.
Once again, this has just been passed down because no one's ever thought I'm sure after we air this episode, the Wikipedia page will magically be updated.
And reference our podcast. Yeah.
which is like totally fine because that's why we're doing this, right? But yeah, that's the history I've always heard, and it's really weird to think about. Like, we are so, like, we say we're so Scottish and everything, but actually tenor drummers and bass drummers even owe a lot to Africa and the African cultures as well. And it's kind of this, they brought it back to the UK and to Scotland in the pipe bands, and then it became a whole thing. And then it was like, well, yeah, I mean, traditionally the bass drummers and tenor drummers wear leopard skins. That's what you do.
Let's bring that back, but faux leopard skin.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not about to slay any leopards on behalf of pipe band.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so I thought that was really fascinating. And they were primarily, back then, it was like, okay, you have flourishing tenors that also play more or less the same thing that the bass drum plays,
mm-hmm.
to keep the time, and then flourish also. So tenors were kind of important, and they were kind of they were kind of like an not an alternative to a bass drum, but like always kind of buddies with the bass drum. And then throughout over time, it was still, I don't know if you've seen any of those pictures online. We Googled it the other day, I know, of the tenor mallets that had like the tassels on the
For
end.
those watching the video, we'll pop that in there.
Yeah, we'll pop a little picture of that here, wherever. But yeah, it became popular in, like, I want to say like the 50s to 70s, where tenors would have these mallets that were like basically only for flourishing, because like they're like, oh, you have a bass drum, so why do you need to play at all? Just be the eye candy or whatever.
Which we are.
Which, I mean, we are, but so they had these like mallets with tassels on. I tried playing with a set of them one time, and I was like, oh my god. And the purpose was to slow down your spins, so that the tassels would flip around and you would see like more of the visual effect, which is kind of cool in the idea of it. But then people started to be like, well, tenors need to actually have a musical role, right? So that kind of devolved into sort of, there was this weird like awkward teen stage of what I'll call it with tenor drumming in like the early 90s, where it was like tenors were doing a lot of playing instead of flourishing. And then that was when you get a lot of comments on score sheets of like, tenors are all they're just too loud, they're too dominant, they're in the way. Either be a bass drum or a snare drum. Why do you need this other drum? So tenor drumming actually was on the verge of dying out, which is very sad. But then we have this young man named Tyler Fry, who came into the pipe band scene as a teenager, and in like the late 90s, playing with some really, really good grade 1 bands in Scotland, he brought back this art of flourishing, but he actually did it in a musical way that was like, what is this? It fits with the music. And
I guess it's fine.
I know, I guess it's okay. And
okay.
He was also playing like the actual like drum scores that fit with the music, and had this idea that like you can be musical and have flourishing be part of it, and it was like revolutionary for people. So like tenor drummers today owe a ton of gratitude, debt of gratitude to Tyler Fry, because that's like incredible. I know we're all like, oh, he makes mallets, like, that's what he's famous for. Like, really, we kind of wouldn't all be doing what we're doing today if it wasn't for his pioneering of this genre.
It's wild to me that that's not how it worked in the first place.
I know, right? It's just like I said, there's this awkward they want to do something cool by taking the flourishing, and then we got into like, oh, well, you also need to play, but we have these stupid frilly mallets that don't do anything.
Oh, why?
Yeah, I don't know, but it just, I mean, it goes to show that if you are a good musician, and you can take this instrument and you can make it something that truly benefits the pipe band world.
And it does. It really does. It sounds good. It's nice flavor.
Yeah.
On top of that is the band.
That deserves another drink.
Amen.
Amen, sister. But yeah, for those of you who are kind of still in doubt about what tenor actually does in the pipe band, let's talk a little bit about the musicality of tenor drumming.
Yes.
So, contrary to what a lot of people have said, and I've been absolutely floored when I've heard this, I've taught several bands and workshops across the country, and people are always like floored I'm like, you have to tune your drum, and they're like, okay, cool.
We tune it all to one note, right?
Yeah, and they're like, but wait, what, a note? You tune a drum to a note? And then I'm like, you tune it to multiple notes.
What? No.
Like, that's not a thing. It's just, it goes boom, right? It's not, it's just there. Well, actually, you tune a tenor drum to a note based on how big it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Based on the diameter. Like, if it's a bigger drum.
It's a lower note.
What?
Because, it's lower. Like, a bass is big.
A bass is big,
and
so
it's
it makes
low.
a lower note. Yeah. And a smaller drum, a smaller tenor, like if you got maybe like a 14-inch or 15-inch, it's like a higher note.
No.
Than like
Note.
Note. See what you did there. Yeah. So we have this really weird instrument where we can, like, if you have different sizes, you can, like, make different notes.
No. What's the point of the different sizes?
Right?
Shouldn't they all be the same note?
And then, yeah, you can have different notes, and you can actually play things on them that complement the melody.
You mean like a chord?
Like a chord. Oh my god.
Oh, we got 4 tenors. We can make a chord.
A chord, you got 4 notes.
Wow.
Think of that. Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize that if you tune your drums to a certain note, like if you tune all your drums based on their diameters and you have, a few notes and they're all playing at the same time, what you're doing basically is you're almost playing a chord like on a piano or a guitar. So what we do in our band, we got 4 tenors. That goes back to your question. Why would you have 4 tenors? What would you do with 4 tenors? Well, fun thing to think about. So we'll talk about this more when we talk about the music theory behind bagpipe music, which is going to be a later episode.
Oh, yeah.
But most pipe band music that you'll play for like mass bands or whatever is going to be in the key of A major or D major. So think of the tenor drum like each tenor drum is a note on a bass guitar. So you can actually play chords with your tenor drum line that will match the chords that you should be playing in the pipe music. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you can tune one of your drums to, like, let's say a low D, and then anything basically that is a D chord, for those of you that know music theory, you can have your D tenor be playing quarter notes, or they could even do like a riff, like a triplet pattern, or match whatever rhythm the snares are doing if the snares have some cool accents, and it will sound good because you have the D of the tenor matching the D chord of the pipes. So then you could also add in, like, let's say, okay, an F sharp, which is a note in the D chord, and then you could have the D tenor and the F sharp tenor either playing at the same time or playing kind of a little back and forth or alternating, and you can make some really interesting harmonies that way.
I don't know if you have ever played a chord on a piano, but they're 4 notes that sound good together.
Yes, imagine that. So tenor drummers today, you'll see a lot of grade 1 bands especially that have like 8 tenors or like 9 tenors. And you're like, why do they need 9 tenors? What if they're all playing at the same time? They're going to be way too loud. I don't want to hear that. Well, ideally, it depends on the band, but ideally you could tune all of those tenors to all different notes. And then you would have harmonies available for any chord that is in your medley or your MSR or whatever you have. So really, if you think about it, you're augmenting the pipe music with a different harmony, and then you're also augmenting the snare music by adding in another level of rhythm, another rhythm component to it. So maybe your snares have a lot of cool accents that you want to really pull out by adding the same notes in the tenor line. Or maybe you have, a cool harmony in the pipes that really focuses on one particular note or one particular chord, and you want to have those tenors with those notes playing more in that tune. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So, back to flourishing. You ever heard people say, like, oh, flourishing tenors, whatever. They just look nice.
I mean, I don't get that because we look and sound amazing. So,
I mean, we do both. But a lot of people will say, yeah, well, okay, I'll have a rhythm tenor in my band, or I'll be a rhythm tenor, but I don't want to do that flourishing nonsense. That's just nonsense. I've heard that before.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not even joking. So, and I just told you this story about how flourishing came from the African tribes.
It's because they're spooked.
It's because they're too afraid,
Yeah.
right? If you like, oh, I don't want any of that in my band, it's like the intimidation factor is working. You're too intimidated. And flourishing, actually, when done properly, can have a huge effect. It's like think about going to a rock concert, and you have like all the lights, and then you have like the way everything kind of comes together, and like the light show just makes it so much better of a show than just like the band just on a stage. Like imagine seeing a band in like a high school cafeteria versus seeing that same band on an actual stage and with, you know, concert lighting and sky, you know, oh, it's super cool. Like that adds hugely to the visual effect of everything.
And that's what a tenor does.
And that's what a tenor does exactly. So, you know, you have to do it properly. And we have a lot of flourishing tutorials that we're going to post on our channel, and some even some, you know, mass band scores and that kind of thing. You have to do it properly. You have to know where to put flourishes when. You know, you don't want to be going up into a huge flourish if it's in the middle of Amazing Grace, right? That kind of wouldn't fit. But yeah, you have to do it properly. But when done properly, you can really accent what the pipes are doing, what the snares are doing, and really bring together the whole show. And you have to, you know, consider that this is a tradition that wouldn't have lasted for like almost 200 years now if it didn't really do anything, you know. It's part of the tradition and it's part of the culture, and yeah, it may not have exactly come from the Highlands in the 1600s or whatever, like we think of bagpipes as having been, but it's a huge part of what we do. In fact, I remember, and I always go back to this whenever I think about the history of tenor drumming, I was literally in my 8th grade world history class. And I was in my world history class, and we were watching a documentary about World War II. And they were talking about, I swear, they were talking about Nazi Germany and how like big on ceremony they were. And there was like a video of a tenor drummer. I'm watching this, and I'm in my social studies class, and I'm looking around at people like, do they think I'm a Nazi? Like, do they know? And I swear, and it was, you know, the leopard print, and I'm wondering, like, you know, this is such a huge part of like the culture from back then. Of course, no one thought I was a Nazi at that point, because it's like, you know, they don't know that most people didn't know that I was a tenor drummer. Even if they did, they're like, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
But, like, I recognized it, and I was like, oh, crap, what I do goes back this far, you know?
It's weird. It's wild.
Weird. It's weird to think about.
Yeah, you're Nazi.
I mean, I'm not. Let's,
tenor drummers are not Nazis.
I mean, some of them might be.
Oh,
I don't know.
Mm-mm, get out of town. You're not a tenor drummer.
I mean, I hope you're not. If
Hope
you're
you're
not,
Nazi.
then I think we can agree the Worldwide Council of Tenor Drummers will kick you out.
Yes. You're cut.
Yeah.
Cut from the team.
Yeah. I just always remember that, because it's just like, what is this? And I thought for the moment, I was like, are they talking about German, or are they talking about like British? And I forget which exactly it was, but I'm like, you can't, you know, mix your British traditions in with your German traditions and be like, Nazis are really big on ceremony. Look at this pipe band, you know? It's like, please don't. Yeah. So I just, whenever I hear someone be like, well, flourishing really doesn't do anything for the band, it's like, no. Okay, yeah, if you make a CD, like an audio recording, like, you're not going to hear the flourishing because it's just air, right?
Right.
But, like, the whole part of pipe band that's interesting is not just the music. It's, like, seeing the whole band there in their kilts. And
It's the culture and the aesthetic and just everything about it.
Yeah, and being like, holy crap, I see this band walking down the street, and it's like, they're all in step, and they're wearing their kilts.
Yeah, they sound cool and look cool.
Tenors are flourishing. And
what are they doing? I'm intimidated.
Yeah, exactly. Intimidated by their flourishing, which is how it was always intended to be. So yeah, that's a kind of a brief history of tenor drumming and introduction to the music theory of it all. Yeah.
When I was in high school, when I first joined the band and I was starting to learn, I would carry my mallets around with me, so everybody knew I was in the pipe band. And the first thing a lot of people would say to me, because that was back when like raves and EDM was a really big thing. I would sit there and practice and then come up to me like, do you rave? What are you doing? Have you tried that with glow sticks? And I just like, what? Please leave me alone.
Please leave me alone. I'm trying to practice.
I'm trying to scare you away.
Exactly. It's not working. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's too funny. And we've done sets before with glow sticks.
With glow sticks, yeah.
By the way, tenor drummers out there are super fun.
Glow sticks.
Don't hit your drum with glow sticks. That's not good.
No, and practice before you go live with it. Don't just dive in.
We did that one time.
Yeah.
Which did not turn out.
It was fine.
It was okay.
It looked good.
It was all right.
Yeah.
People were impressed. But yeah, we were at a Christmas concert one time. That's what it was.
Yeah, it was Mary Main Street.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're like, oh, let's, play with glow sticks. And we did. We did like green and red glow sticks. And we did our whole whatever tune it was with glow sticks.
I feel like it was Cabernet.
Might have been Cabernet.
I feel like that's what it was.
Yeah, I don't know.
Either way, it looked super cool, but glow sticks are nothing like the mallets, so
yeah, the weight balance is all off.
Get a practice session there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's tenor drumming. It's a super fun time. I can just tell you, bass drum is a fun time too. I'm not going to say it's not a fun time. That's fun in its own way. But tenor drumming.
We'll talk about the fun in another episode.
Yeah. We're not talking about fun on this podcast. What are you talking about?
We're talking about education.
Yeah. Got to keep it focused. So yeah, let us know if this was interesting to you to hear about the history of tenor drumming and kind of some appreciation for our tenor drummers out there. We're going to be doing some more history and stuff of different instruments. We hope it's interesting to you guys.
If it's not, tell us.
Or just don't watch.
Yeah,
just
or
go somewhere else.
No, keep watching.
Or keep watching and just see if it's we probably won't have the bubbly on every episode. But try to keep you guys entertained.
Yes.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
Cool. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, everyone. If you enjoyed this show, then support us on Patreon for exclusive content as well as the video of us recording this. We'll have special exercises we'll be writing as well as tips and tricks with tenor drumming and other instruments to come. Subscribe to us on YouTube for some tenor tutorials and possibly other tutorials later on. And like us on Facebook at Podman Podcast.